Hi, I'm Paul Germain, and welcome to another session of Smart Boating. As you know, if you watched the show before, we cover a variety of topics, from marine insurance to docking, and the general idea is to provide you with some information that will help you make smarter decisions and have more fun on the water. Every now and then we take a little side trip, and that's the case today, and we're going to explore the world of wood boat restoration. And joining us is a pretty knowledgeable guy in that area. His name is Bjorn Buchan. Bjorn?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Bjorn, we got a cool show here today. I think people are going to find it really interesting on wood boat restoration. But before we get into it, can you share a little bit about your boating background and your background in wood boat restoration?
So I have been involved in the classic boating for about 10 years. Always wanted a wood boat. I have a employment history in woodworking and technical engineering. My time came 10 years ago to make my dream come true and restore a boat, and it created a passion and maybe a little bit more than a hobby.
Almost an obsession, maybe. Yeah,
maybe it is.
Yeah, passion, that narrow line.
It's a fine balance there between family and passion.
Right, yes. So about 10 years, you've been doing about 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of experience in this area.
Well, I restored 3 boats in 10 years, and one right here that's in the line, one in the shop that's going on. So I guess it's has become an important part of my life.
Yes, it has, yeah. Well, you've got just the right experience for the show.
Thank you.
So why don't we get right into it?
We will.
Okay. Well, Bjorn, the subject of wood boat restoration, like most, is too large to cover in a half-hour show.
Yep.
But I think we can cover some of the more important points. This boat behind us, can you tell us what it is and why you bought it for restoration?
So the boat behind us is a Riva, 1960 Riva, Florida, built in northern Italy by Carlo Riva on Lake Iseo. The Riva family was in business since the mid-1850s.
Yeah, almost.
And his grandfather and father built boats. His father made some outboard racing hydroplanes before the World War II. And when Carlo Riva took over the company in 1948, he had this vision about building the luxury wooden boat that the Riva has become.
That they're known for, yeah.
Yes.
Now he produced them from what, about 1948 to...
Yes, the last wooden boat produced by Riva was in 1996. And from 1948 to 1996 he produced about 3,500 wood boats.
Okay.
And as an example, Chris Craft in the 50s and 60s could produce 3,000 boats of one model.
Okay, all right. So it's just an exponential difference between the two.
Exactly, and that's why Riva is a rare boat today. Maybe about 2,500 of those 3,500 remains.
Oh, really?
And the boat behind us was produced about 426 models in about 10 years of the Florida.
Okay.
80, 90 of them remains today in the world. So it's a rare boat.
It's a rare boat, and it makes it worth putting the time and effort in that you have to make it come back to life, right?
Absolutely. This boat behind us is probably going to require, 1,500 hours of work.
Yeah. So you want it to be worth it at the end.
Exactly. There had to be some value at the end of the end of the year you're going to work on it.
Yes. Well, Bjorn, one of the things that made these Rivas unique was their construction. And my understanding is that somewhere in the late 40s they changed from a traditional planked boat to what they call molded boat, right?
Yes, a molded plywood. So in 1948, they created a molded plywood bottom, and they did a molded plywood deck.
Now, what does molded mean? How can we explain that to our viewers?
Yeah, it's basically you're laying solid veneer lumbers in different direction with glue, and the top layer, the beautiful layer, is a little bit thicker and go the whole length direction of the molded plywood you have made.
So the end goal is to get a light and strong fixture or functionality of that particular
Yes, much lighter and much stronger.
Okay.
For example, Americans, they did solid wood 2-layer bottoms,
Yes.
at least through the 50s and late 50s, even into the 60s. Yes.
So these guys started with the bottom, and then they introduced that to the decks, I guess.
Yeah, got into the decks, and in 1958 they started with the molded sides
they did.
on the side as well. Up until they were traditional plank on batten planking with screws into the batten. But in '58, on the smaller model, they went over to the molded plywood.
Oh, they got really good at that.
Exactly, they created large molds. Pirelli tire company made the huge presses and the air balloons to press them into the forms.
Interesting.
Yes.
So you have this molded construction, and then my understanding is that we're looking at some of the hardware here on the deck, and a lot of that hardware they actually designed and manufactured themselves,
exactly. Right? So that's one thing to Riva, that they made all of their hardware themselves, but also the quality of the hardware, the quality of the chrome. For example, he put 2 microns or 20 microns, sorry, of chrome on the hardware, and the design of them, the wraparound windshield came, also in '58 or '57, '58, and American similar boats, they use a straight windshield, way into the '60s.
All right. So when you pick up a boat like this, to get it relatively intact, especially including the hardware, that's an important thing,
exactly.
Right?
So what we have here is a typical barn find, what we consider a barn find boat. It could be, it's worn, it's all intact, and getting hardware, finding hardware, reproducing hardware is very, very expensive. Very, very expensive. The bow light could be, as much as $1,500. The front bow piece can be as much as $1,000 to get reproduced. So when you're finding a project and where you have most of the hardware, it's a big win.
Right. Well, Bjorn, the boats that were built in the 40s, 50s, 60s, I've noticed a common thread, and that is that many of the manufacturers took styling cues from the automobiles built in that time frame. Was that true for Riva as well?
Absolutely. Carlo Riva, he was very fascinated by the American automotive. He used, in this example, he used a Chrysler steering wheel. And as you can see, the controls are on the port side of the boat.
Yes.
Every other boat manufacturer, even at that time, had starboard side controls, but he insisted on having port side.
Just like a car.
Just like a car.
Just like a car.
And, Riva boats built through the production, and even new boats built today have controls on the port side.
All right, so a lot of styling cues from there. It looks like you got a gear shift lever.
Exactly. He,
just like a car.
Is for this boat has a velvet hydraulic transmission, and he put a gear shifter like on automotive when you have the gear shifter on the tree. Yeah. 3 on the tree.
3 on the tree. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the instruments will go along like what you see in a car of that age too.
Exactly. So Chris Craft also used this style of instrumentation, or Century or any other American boat builders, but he wanted to look with the knobs. He wanted to be very American, influence as well. But I think the most important part, is that Carlo had from the beginning and throughout the production, and even new production today, has the controls on the port side, just like an automobile.
And we've got seating for 2 or 3 up front, and then we're going to look at the sun pad here in a second, right?
Exactly. There's a single cockpit on this model. It's a single cockpit up front with 2, 3 if you're very, very good friends. Yes. But we can take a look in the back and look at the feature that Carlo Riva built into the Florida model.
Absolutely. Well, Bjorn, these Rivas were very well known for their craftsmanship and their speed, their beauty and their speed.
Yep.
And I guess they had a variety of engines over the years. So did they start with European and then move over to American power?
Yes, in the early days, Carlo Riva used Italian BPM engines, not known for reliability, high RPM, low torque. And in 1953, he traveled, not speaking a word of English, to Detroit to visit Chris Craft. To see if he can become the European importer of Chris Craft engines. Yeah. And that he obtained. and from about 53 on he used Flathead 6 engine, and then went into both Chryslers, Chris-Craft V8, GM, and in the later 10 years from 65 on he used
Crusaders,
Riva Crusader engine, that's they called.
And he tweaked them a little bit for his purpose. He had what, copper manifolds on them, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Even the early Flathead 6 engines, he put oil filters on. They didn't. Chris-Craft did not use that.
Right.
And he modernized them throughout the time with oil coolers.
And the cooling system. He upgraded the cooling system too, right?
Yeah. And of course, when Cal Connell from Crusader Marine got involved in 1965 to build what's now called the Riva Crusader engine, he got the brass manifolds, to prevent corrosion for use in salt water.
Right. So pretty stout engines, and what the Americans brought was both reliability and torque, right?
Exactly. Low RPM most of the time, and high torque. Good for water skiing and reliability.
Yes.
That he didn't have before.
Mm-hmm. Well, Bjorn, these Rivas are all luxury boats. And we're looking at the sun pad back here. That's a very unusual and luxurious feature.
Yeah, certainly from the mid-50s on, it was unusual for other boats to have a sun pad. Mm-hmm. It was original with a water ski pole and a swim ladder, and it also came with a bimini top you can put up when you were lounging in the sun in the back of your sun pad.
Nice. So these are luxury to the just top level, grade A.
Exactly. And an example, Riva boats cost more than double what for example, a Chris-Craft of similar size.
Right.
At the time.
Well, Bjorn, we were just looking at a restoration boat of Florida, and it looks like we've got here some pieces from a slightly larger boat in the line, a 55 Ariston.
That's right. So when you find a Riva project, you pick it up. Even if it's as bad shape as this. This boat is probably as bad as it gets for a project boat.
Yeah.
It was complete, all the pieces, but it was collapsed and crushed some pieces. Mm-hmm. But you find the pieces. And you have a number, you find identification numbers for the boat, and then you can start the restoration.
And even in this stage of disrepair, you took on this boat because it was a pretty rare model, I guess, right?
Yes, it's a very rare model. Of the first 137 Aristons built, 15 or 20 remains.
Right, so this is a great platform to build from.
Exactly, so it's still called a restoration since you already have identifications of the project you're starting.
Mm-hmm. Well, Bjorn, at the beginning, when you got a restoration project, and perhaps it's in somewhat high state of disrepair like the one we just looked at and the one we're going to be talking about, you need to get some drawings together, right?
That's right. The Riva Historical Society in Italy has provided me with the original drawings of the boat, though they don't have any offsets of them. So then it's very important for us to get the information I need from the drawings.
I see. All right. Well, you've got a drawing here. Let's move over here and. Can you tell us a little bit about the detail here? If we start at the bow, what are some of the important things that you're doing as you craft this drawing?
So the drawing we have is basically a plan drawing. It does not have the offsets in it. Mm-hmm. So the project went in so poor shape that it's the important thing for me is to find the bow angle.
Okay.
To find the chine dimensions, where the keel is, where the spacing between the frames and where the cockpit and such is placed. Mm-hmm. And from this drawing and the scale we have, I can make my own offset drawings. The offset from a fixed point up to the chine at frame station 1, 2, 3, all the way back to frame station number 21.
I see. All right. So you use a variety of information from the old pieces to similar drawings of similar boats and whatever drawings you can get from Riva as the foundation, then you build it from there, right?
Exactly. So, if I had the skills, you could do this in CAD as well, but,
yes.
I'm old school and, a pencil and a eraser works just as well.
This works, yeah.
Just as well.
Well, Bjorn, once you get the drawings together to show you the specifications, different components of the boat, yep. You need to gather a bunch of tools and a bunch of materials. We've got some around us here. Can you explain what you use?
Yes, to restore a wooden boat, you need basic woodworking equipment: bandsaw, table saw, a planer. You need regular handsaw, routers, sanders. For tool wise, it's basic woodworking tools.
Basic woodworking. Okay.
Then you get into the details of the materials you use. We use a little bit of West epoxy for laying up the plywood or the molded sides.
Yes.
We use 3M 5200 for wood-to-wood adhesive.
Okay.
3M 5200 is actually a sealant, but in the woodworking we like to use it for an adhesive because it never dries.
Very strong.
Very strong and never dries hard,
Right.
which is good in the flexibility of a boat.
Yeah. How about these fastenings? I've got a nail here. This nail's a little different than an ordinary nail.
Yeah, it's a nail for a copper nail or copper rivet, and this is a mating part. It's a row.
Okay.
And Riva used that in the joints between the frames. So they have put the piece together and they put a row and a nail in it.
Okay.
And we also used silicone bronze screws. It is the best for maritime use, certainly if you're going to be in salt water.
Yeah.
But it has a price. Each screw is a quarter a piece. So when you have a boat 21 feet, you're looking at 3,500 screws.
All right. So you make a substantial investment in the screws.
Exactly, and you better have your battery for your drill charged.
All right. When you're restoring a wood boat, you've got some original pieces like this, and you want pieces like this.
Yep.
It's really important, especially on a Riva, when you're doing restoration, to get the wood right, because my understanding is that the factory used to reject 80% of the wood that was actually supplied to them.
That's right. So Riva exclusively use African mahogany for the boat. For the sides and decks and covering boards, he used Kaya mahogany.
Okay.
And what's specific with Riva is that on its sides, the sides was single length planks, no butt joints.
Okay.
So if you had a 21-foot boat, you had to have 21-foot planks. If you had a 28-foot boat, some of the larger Rivas, you had to have a 28-foot plank.
That's a long plank.
And that is very, very hard to obtain in the United States because of shipping and such. The longest you can find today is probably 18, maybe 20 feet.
Okay.
And that doesn't work very well when I need at least 21 feet
Right,
plus some
exactly.
cut-offs in each end.
Exactly.
So through some contacts in Europe, I was able to obtain African mahogany from Congo, sawn in Germany. It was actually a whole log.
Oh, okay.
It is.
The whole log shipped from Africa to Germany.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it was sawn there to my specifications, air dried and kiln dried, and then in a container arrived here in the US last August. And it's grade A African mahogany, 35-foot lengths.
That's what we got behind us, right?
That's right, and it's still seasoning. It's still going to move a little bit, and when time comes, we're ready to resaw and make boat decks and both sides.
Excellent. Well, Bjorn, when you start building the boat from the drawings, like many boats, this boat is actually turtle. Right now it's right side up, but you start with it in a turtle perspective. Looks like a turtle, a shell on a turtle.
Exactly.
And my understanding is that the first thing that you put in are these engine stringers here.
Exactly. So in a boat, there's very few straight surfaces. The only straight surface you have are the engine stringers, this side and this side. And that's where you start. You start upside down with the engine stringers, and then you start building your frames from aft forward one by one.
Okay. Now are there close tolerances on these engine stringers?
Yeah, so the story is that Carlo Riva had a 16th of an inch tolerances on his jigs. So that's the goalpost we have to work with today.
That's a very narrow tolerance.
Absolutely.
And these are actually made of laminated wood, right? Which was common in the Rivas. They used a lot of lamination for lightweight and strength.
That's right. They used for the strength and the lightweight. The bottom was laminated, the decks was laminated, and the sides laminated later years. And you keep the boat straight, you keep the strength in it without cracking and breaking apart. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bjorn, once you get the engine stringers in place, to those close tolerances, I guess the next step is the frames, right?
Exactly, the next thing is the frames, and on this boat there's a lot of frames. They are 11 inches apart, 26 of them in total, and then it's very important that you mark, so when you have all these pieces, you kind of have to figure out where each one of them went. So
yes.
I mark each piece, so 21 for frame set number 21, it's a starboard side and facing forward.
Okay.
And this is the piece that goes into here, and what we now have to replace with a new piece of wood.
Right, so we know that's a good template.
Yep.
And then you take a new piece of wood and
Yep.
you've scratched on this,
Yep.
basically the outline of the old piece. Right?
Exactly, yeah. So you scratch the outline to a new piece of wood. You add a little bit because it's going to be some fairing and adjustment later. So I add anywhere from a 1/4 inch and something like that in the width of it, so I can have something to work with when I need to fair it in place.
All right, so we've got this sketched out. Why don't we go
Cut it up.
saw it up?
There we will.
All right. Bjorn, we got the marked up frame here, and the next step is to cut it with this pan saw, right?
That's right, and let's get to it.
All right. Bjorn, you've cut the piece.
Yes.
And now I guess it's an iterative process of actually fitting it to the boat, right?
Exactly. So now I have a back brace here, so I know the fair line on the outside of the boat. Before we install it, we sand and finish off the inside. There will be a couple of times between here and the bandsaw until you have the right fit. It does look like we have the right fit right now.
Okay.
And now we have the last frame made. Next part of the process is to create those side braces that Riva used for all of his construction. One on each side, they are glued up and then finally riveted together with nails and rows.
And a couple of the unusual, that was very, that aspect of construction was unusual, Rivas against other boats, right?
Absolutely.
And the number of frames, I think, was another unusual aspect, right?
Exactly. So Riva in the early days had frames 11 inches on center, and American boats in the period had 2 feet on the center.
Wow.
And American boats was screwed together, just frame on frame, and as again Riva, laminated together with the rivets.
Right. So a lot higher level of complexity to build a Riva.
Exactly. Way more parts. Way more parts.
Well, Bjorn, there were a lot of unique features to Riva, but I guess one of them in particular was their transoms, right?
The transom, yeah. So the design of the Ariston transom is a barrel back design.
It is.
It's completely rounded. When you get the decks up here, it will look like a barrel. That's why it's considered a barrel back.
Okay.
The construction is heavy duty. It's 16/4 or 4-inch thick mahogany outside.
Yeah.
It has a bulby surface to the outside.
Okay.
It's rounded in all direction.
Wow.
It has a bracing back here for where the 3-inch tailpipe is coming out from the Chris Craft engine.
You've got the keel down here.
Exactly.
That's a little unusual, isn't it?
The keel is coming out here, and it's dovetailed into the transom framing.
So that was different than the other boats of that era. I
Yes,
guess, right?
it's a little nudge to the engineering and the quality and design that Riva and Carlo Riva put into the boats. It is, and you see the batten series. Again, this is a 1955 boat, so it was planked. It was pre the molded sides.
All right.
So here is the width of each of the side planks, and this is where you screw your side planking into the battens.
All right. This is a major part of the boat restoration, boat build.
It's a very part, and the transom at the boat show is the focal point of the boat. That's where you always put your best wood.
Okay. Well, Bjorn, once you get the frames in place, I guess the next basic step is put the chine in.
Exactly. So then you notch out for all the frames, and you put the chines in. The chines goes all the way, single piece from front to aft. That's where the sides and the bottom meets.
Right.
It has to be a solid piece. These boats are runabouts with hard chines, where it's not like a sailing vessel which is rounded.
Yes.
It's a hard chine, flat bottom boat.
Right. And then once you get the chines in, you get the frames, and then you have to start fairing the frames.
Probably the most important job in the boat, it comes after the chains are in. Then it's fairing the frames.
Okay.
So make sure you have a nice, sweet line, as we like to call it, is when all the frames flow. I use this piece of wood with the same thickness as the siding will have. I clamp it up, I sight down, make sure one frame is, in line. There's no bulge on that piece of wood.
Right.
And once all of those, the entire length of the boat is faired in nice, it's time to come with the battens. The batten is usually a 1.5 by 3/8 piece of wood. We will notch in. It will be notched into each frame. There's going to be 7 of them, and this is where we would attach the planks on this boat.
Right, right. So that's like studs in a house.
Exactly.
This
So the screws, the planking will meet in the middle, and you will screw, every 3.5, 4 inches. The entire length of the boat, and that's where your 3,500 screws going to go in.
That's a lot of screws.
Exactly.
Bjorn, once you get the chine in, and you get the frames and the battens, as you move throughout the boat, you do pretty much more of the same in different aspects, whether it's the decking or the planking for the deck, the molded planking for the deck, and that sort of thing, right?
Exactly. So when we're done with the sides, get those ready, we start with the frames. Exactly the same process, framing, battens, and again, this one had a molded deck, plywood deck.
Layers, one layer, and then another layer, and another layer.
Exactly. And then we have hours and hours of sanding, staining, find the right stain, and then the finish, of course, is the most important is the varnish. And this boat, Riva always had excellent finish on their boat. They're known for the finish.
And it could take months, if I remember correctly.
Exactly.
They'd do a couple coats, they'd wait a couple weeks.
We will do that. We will probably put maybe 14, 15 coats on, put the boat away for 6-8 weeks to let it completely settle in.
Really?
Then take it back out, sand it down, and probably another 14, 15, 16 more coats total.
Is that right?
Yes, I would suggest that this boat probably going to have 30 coats of varnish.
Wow, and it's going to come out stunning.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's going to be, you have to be just as good as when they left the company. And I said Riva was known for the finish, for the chrome, and the varnish job.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, Bjorn, this classic boat behind us, a beauty. This is one of the ones you recently finished, right?
Exactly. It's a 1940 Chris Craft Deluxe, or also known as a barrelback. And again, if I put all the work in right, I will hopefully have a boat that looks like this.
And this is a show winner too?
It is.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah, so it paid off.
It surely did.
Well, Bjorn, it's hard to believe, but we've run out of time for the show today. And we've covered a lot of ground, actually, in terms of wooden boat restoration, particularly in the area of Rivas, in terms of all the different reconstruction techniques you have to use to put one of these fine craft back together again. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up the show today?
Well, I would like to thank you for inviting me to the show. Something I'm passionate about, and a lot of more people are passionate about, keeping the classic wooden boat floating.
Yes.
Antique and Classic Boat Society is a great source for everything classic boat. acbs.org.
Okay.
A great place to start your search.
Yes.
Here in Massachusetts, we have Bay State Classic Boat Club. You can look up baystateclassicboat.org, and you will see local events happening here and in the region around us.
Wow, that's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Smart Boating viewers, for joining us. If you have comments or questions, go to smartboatingus.com. Thank you.